For some analysis, my colleague Asieh Namdar spoke with William Lee via Zoom. He's the Chief Economist at the Milken Institute. She asked him how much of the AIIB's meetings will be dominated by the economic impact of COVID-19.
Even though the AIIB is oriented toward long-term infrastructure projects, it was inevitable that COVID-19 would come up as an obstacle to the short-term financing, an obstacle that people presented as perhaps having to rethink what is required for infrastructure. Some of the sessions actually were very interesting in the sense that infrastructure we generally think of as dams, roads, bridges, and so on. But the modern infrastructure consists of internet connections and connectivity and ensuring a widespread use of connectable technologies so that we can communicate adequately across different countries and across different regions. COVID-19, I think, has accelerated that trend toward modern infrastructure.
And President Xi Jinping addressed the session. He made a number of points talking about multilateral cooperation, development, innovation. What were the main highlights when you listened to him?
Well, Xi Jinping has often said that China is one of the few major powers in the world that's engaged in multilateralism. But in the case of infrastructure projects, when you think about it, you build infrastructure within a country to connect with its neighbors and perhaps having that infrastructure project coordinated to connect a bunch of neighbors. So in many ways, multilateralism really means sequential bilateralism. And as an American hearing that, the word multilateralism, especially as it's used today, I think much more in the way of sequential bilateralism, which isn't that far from what President Trump has been saying.
You mentioned infrastructure, and that, of course, is a big part of the Belt and Road Initiative. You know a lot about that. You moderated a discussion on that. Tell me a little bit about how that plays into this AIIB annual meeting.
I think at the heart of the Belt and Road Initiative, which was spurred by a lot of China's desire to regain its prominence in the global economy, regain its past prominence as a global leader and multilateral source of trade and just exchange of intellectual knowledge, the AIIB has taken up much of the themes of the need to build infrastructure and coordinated with the Chinese strategy of connecting the countries that were in the old Belt and Road trails going back to the Middle Ages. So in that sense, it was very exciting to hear these plans being revived by the AIIB.
There's a lot of criticism and scrutiny from the United States about some of these projects and about the AIIB Bank, and many had tried, in fact, to convince international donors to stay away from AIIB, and that didn't really happen, did it?
No, because I think the AIIB has been much more careful over the years. After all, the AIIB has done this for many years now. Over the years, I think at the beginning, there was much less in the way of governance than there is now. So at the beginning, the concern was, how are we going to protect investors and how do we have the rule of law? Now I think much more concern is put in place, much more governance principles are being used to satisfy a lot of the Western investment criteria. So in that sense, there's a lot of merging of the needs of the AIIB and the needs of global investors.
And how much has AIIB grown in terms of investments, in terms of projects, in terms of membership since it became operational in 2016?
Exactly. I mean, it started off with, 80 some odd members, and now it's 102. And I think one of the things that AIIB has been very successful in is involving other multilateral agencies, the Asian development banks, the World Bank, in co-financing and working through these many infrastructure projects that it finances, because that's really the way to go, is to bring together all of the multilateral banks so that all of their strengths can be combined into a mutual way of financing, identifying infrastructure projects, and also getting them done in a way that satisfies the needs of the countries involved as well as the investors.